What is trauma? What happens to our body when we experience trauma? Why are some people traumatized while others are not? And how do I get rid of this trauma stored in my body? Hi, my name is Micheline Maalouf. I'm a licensed therapist and a mental health educator and an advocate, and I'm here today to talk to you about all of these questions. Let's start by answering the first question. What is trauma? So in order to discuss what trauma is, let me talk about the difference between trauma and traumatization. So trauma can be defined as anything that causes us and our nervous system to react in order to protect us. This can look like a car accident, it can look like a breakup, a loss of a loved one, being bullied, growing up in poverty, or having a chaotic household. Being traumatized or having a trauma disorder is a consequence of consistently going through these things and then experiencing an overwhelm of emotions and a feeling of helplessness. Many of us will experience trauma, but not all of us will experience traumatization. Traumatization depends on so many different factors, not just the things that happened, but rather what kind of support system did we have? So these are called resilience factors. Those resilience factors play a big role in offsetting the trauma symptoms. So what kind of support do you have? What kind of coping skills do you have? Do you feel loved by those around you? Do you have extracurricular activities? Do you have a good job? Do you feel overall that your life is going pretty well, or is your life kind of a mess all around? So when we think about what causes people to be traumatized, there are so many of these things to take into consideration, and I want to give you this example. Let's assume that we have person A, a child that goes to school and is bullied. And then we have person B, who is also a child that also goes to school and is bullied. One of them ends up with trauma from this bullying while the other one does not. Why does that happen? Well, if we take a look at what's happening in the home, so say for instance that child A is being bullied at school, but they come home and they feel loved by their parents, they feel supported, they feel like their parents understand them, they validate them, maybe they're teaching them skills and tools in order to respond to these bullies. And child B comes home and maybe the parents are really overwhelmed, maybe they're overworked or emotionally unavailable for many reasons. Maybe they have parents with mental health issues and they're not really able to give them that love and support and validation that they're needing. So they're going from one chaotic environment at school to another chaotic environment at home. And therefore, they are not able to regulate their nervous system at home, and the trauma continues and actually piles up. So whereas child A experiences a break, experiences co-regulation, they experience connection with another human being that shows them that things are safe, that things are going to be okay, and disrupts that fight or flight response that they may be experiencing at school, person B is coming home to another set of threats. So what happens in our body when we experience a traumatic event? When we experience something that is life-threatening or something that is really stressful, our body goes into the fight, flight, or freeze response. Our fight response, when we experience a threat, intends to get us to get rid of the threat by eradicating it, killing it, fighting it off. Our flight response intends to eliminate the threat by having us remove ourselves from that situation and running away, getting away from the threat. Our freeze response comes into play when we cannot use our fight response. Maybe we don't feel like we can actually kill this threat. We cannot run, there's nowhere to run. Maybe we're backed into a corner or are unable to see any way that we can escape or outrun this threat, and so it freezes. And the purpose of the freeze response is to slow down functioning all throughout our bodies. It reduces oxygen flow throughout our bodies, it slows down our heart rate, really conserving energy, and that happens so that we don't feel so much pain as the threat attempts to kill us, as morbid as that sounds. And sometimes that might actually happen not only so that we don't die in pain, but also sometimes our body does this in order to maybe trick the threat. If it was a threat that was actually threatened by us and that's why it was trying to kill us, trick it into believing that we are dead and we are no longer a threat to it, so maybe it will leave us alone. Keep in mind that our bodies make the decision as to which one of these it needs to use in any given time, and it's not a logical thing, because when we experience a trauma, our prefrontal cortex, our logical and critical thinking parts of our brain are shut off and are no longer needed, and we go right into our primitive brain that's sole purpose is survival. So your body and your brain do not make decisions based on how it's going to impact your mental health in the long run. It's not going to say, well, you should fight this threat because you're going to feel really bad about yourself if you just freeze. It happens automatically. Its sole purpose is survival. Again, does not care about how we cope with it in the long run. And its sole purpose is to keep us here right now, this very moment. When we experience a traumatic event, we're supposed to be able to get rid of that energy from our body. So if we look at animals in the wild, when they experience something really traumatic, if you think of a dog, even when they experience something, they bump their heads or something happens, what do? They shake, right? They let out that excess energy and they're okay. But when it comes to humans, we tend to kind of suppress everything internally. We don't really allow ourselves to experience emotion. Our society has kind of set itself up in a way that it's really difficult for us to experience and process emotions. There's a lot of shame involved. Thinking of like an example that I think all of us have been through is maybe we encountered a almost accident on the road, or maybe we even got in a minor car accident on the road, maybe on the way to work or school one day. And instead of taking time off and like composing ourselves and shaking and processing what just happened, what ends up happening is we tend to say, pull it together, I need to go into work, and we go to work and we're shaky and we can't focus, but we're not really paying attention to those feelings. Instead, we're focusing on these tasks that in the grand scheme of things, our body's like, I can't focus on right now because my prefrontal cortex, our logical thinking brain, is shut off and I have all this excess energy. Now that's one example, and most of us experience multiple things a day. And if you're experiencing things at home or different things in different situations of your life, then you're piling one thing on top of the other, and that leads to an excess of energy, unprocessed emotion in your body, which leads to traumatization. And as I mentioned earlier, yes, if you have resilience factors, so if you have someone to sit down with you and talk to you about what happened with that car accident, someone to vent to, someone to help you release, or maybe you go to the gym and you work out and you release that extra energy, or maybe you have a really good work environment where you're able to just, call off and say, hey, I'm not going into work today. This was a really rough day. I need to go home and just process and take care of myself. Then those resilience factors, those additional things will help offset that trauma. You'll be able to process your emotions and let out that energy, but we all know that that's not typically how our society functions. So what happens in the long term when we continue to accumulate these traumas? Well, when we experience trauma, our body releases hormones. It increases our heart rate. It releases chemicals in order to get us out of the danger, right? And if we continue to experience these traumatic events and we're unable to process or release them, then we have all of these excess chemicals and all of this excess energy running through our body. And in the long term, those types of situations have been shown to increase our chances for chronic illness. Things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome have been shown to have links to traumatic experiences early in life. I personally struggle with Hashimoto's, which is a autoimmune disease of the thyroid, and my symptoms came about after experiencing 3 years of consistent trauma. And many of the people that I've talked to with the same disorder have also talked about how their symptoms came about after a traumatic event. Your immune system starts to suffer, your concentration, your relationships. You experience a lot of body aches and pains because we're always tense in that flight or flight response. If your body's constantly thinking that it's under threat, then there's all of this pent up energy and tension in your body. And it's just our quality of life diminishes significantly. We might experience mental health issues. So it'll start presenting itself as anxiety, depression, inability to get out of bed, addictions. And people come to me and they say, well, what do I do? Like, I can't, I don't know why I'm so depressed. When we look back at their history of what's been going on throughout their whole lives, they've had all of these events happening that they minimize themselves, but have been trapped because they didn't have to process them, or they didn't have the resilience factors, they didn't have the support they needed at that time. So they bottled everything up, and over time, no matter how small you think this event was, it adds up. So what do we do? What do we do if we realize that we have trauma stored in our bodies because we're experiencing all of this pain, we're experiencing mental health issues, now we're realizing that we've been through some things? Well, the first thing is, notice if you're in a safe environment now. If you're not in a safe environment now, let's say that the trauma is still going on in your household, for instance, then I want you to keep in mind that no matter what tools you use, every single time you walk into this traumatic situation, whether it be at work or within a relationship or at home, you are going to naturally have a reaction and have a response to that. If you're not in the trauma anymore, let's say you were in a really bad relationship and now you're living on your own, and you're safe and you're out of this traumatic experience, then it's going to be a little bit easier for you to start working and healing on the past. But if you're still in the situation, then be patient with yourself. Take your time, implement those coping skills, work on getting some resilience factors into your life, some people that feel safe, so that when you do go through really difficult times, you can have something or someone or a group of things that can help offset that. So as I mentioned, trauma is stored in the body in forms of energy. So if we are about to fight or flight, then we might feel tension, our heart rate increases, our breathing gets really fast. We might feel like we're hyperventilating. Sounds like panic, right? Sounds like anxiety, right? Or anger. That's exactly how it shows up. It shows up as, restlessness, agitation, anger, irritability, panic attacks. That's how trauma stored in the body shows up. It's how it's diagnosed as anxiety or panic sometimes. And if that's the case, if this is the type of symptom that you're experiencing, you need to work on slowing down. And one of the ways that you can do that is to allow yourself some time throughout your day to sit and be still. And do this by looking around, and you can use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, which I'm sure you've seen online, but if you haven't, it's the technique where you look around the room and you name 5 things that you can see. You walk around the room and you touch 4 things. Try to find things with different textures and temperatures and feel them, and really intently feel if they're cold, if they're warm, if they have ridges, and really use your sense of touch. Then you listen for 3 things in your environment. It could be music, maybe the wind outdoors, maybe an airplane. You listen and you name what you're hearing. 2 things you can smell, and you can again walk around the room, pick up a few things to smell. It could be your own hair, your shirt, perfume, doesn't matter. And then 1 thing you can taste. This one's usually the hardest one for people because they're like, what do I taste in this room? I recommend having, go getting some sour candies or sweet candies, whatever, to keep with you at all times. It could even be water, coffee, tea, juice. It doesn't really matter. Just engage that sense of taste. You do this all at once. What you're doing is you're introducing that prefrontal logical awareness here and now part of the brain. And if you're in the here and now, you cannot be in fight or flight at the same time. So this will help your brain realize that you're not actually in any danger right now. Because if you were, then you wouldn't be able to do this activity, right? So you want to do that, and at the end of this is a step that a lot of people miss is I want you to say, I am safe. Like, notice that I am safe. Safety isn't what could possibly happen when you meet your boyfriend after you finish watching this video. It's not what could happen tomorrow when you go to work, or what this person might be saying about you, or any of that stuff, right? Safety is what is happening in this very second right now. If we need our fight or flight responses, they will be activated in the moments wherever those what ifs in your mind are happening. If you were to be encountered this person that might be dangerous after you finish watching this video, then that response will come up again, and that's okay. What we're trying to do is interrupt that response right now in this very second. So am I safe this very second? Take a breath, release tension from your body. You have to do this over and over and over and over and over again. Every single time you catch yourself having tension in your body, you need to do this. The traumatization did not happen overnight, most likely. So the reducing of the symptoms will not happen overnight. You have to be consistent. Now, if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, dissociated, depressed, no energy, so there's no agitation, you can barely get out of bed, you don't even feel your body, your emotions are numb, then the opposite of that is what we need to introduce into your body is movement. So you can do a few things. You can stand up and shake, shaking your body to start moving the blood flow, introducing that energy. So you can do what I'm doing with me right now. And when you release, you can feel the tingles and the blood flowing throughout your body. You can dance. You could do this, put some music on and dance and shake it off a few minutes a day. If you have time, do it for longer. You can tap. So there's in Qigong, there's this activity, I don't know if it's called activity, but you tap up and down your arms. You can just tap up and down. That makes it easier if you don't like the shaking. You can give yourself a gentle massage. Just feel your hands massage up and down your arms if you're okay with gentle touch. Obviously, if you have trauma around touch and this is triggering for you, then don't do it. The key here is to notice the physical sensations and start that mind-body connection, because when we freeze, what happens is we're disconnecting our mind from our body, hence dissociation. So we disconnect so that we don't feel that pain. And sometimes that just lingers for a very long period of time. So our goal now is to reintroduce that connection. And these are really good ways to do that. Again, same as for the people that are stuck in fight or flight. You need to do this frequently. Another part of healing would be some reparenting and inner child work. That is a whole different video that I will do in the future. But for now, I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope that you learned something new. And if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know if there's something that you want me to dig deeper into, if something I didn't say didn't make any sense. So let me know what you would like to hear from me next time. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so. And I will see you next time.